Hey good people, Batavia here. Welcome to my Chicago garden in November, where importantly we still have summer crops. So okay, housekeeping items, big thank yous to those who like, watch, comment, share, and subscribe to VEGO Garden. I appreciate y'all. If you haven't subscribed already, consider it. Our average first frost date is November the 1st. Today is November the 10th, and we haven't seen frost. We've had over the last 10 days, and even prior to that, some low temps. We got down to like 38 degrees Fahrenheit. And generally speaking, what I should have in my garden, it really shouldn't matter. You know, if you look at cool weather crops, they do just fine. But I still have summer crops in my garden. So we're gonna do a garden tour today. Okie doke, so most of what's growing in the garden is in the backyard, so that's where we'll focus today. Really happy to have a pop of color from the snapdragons that came back. Green beans. There's some that I'm going to enjoy with dinner, and then there's some that are larger like this. Once the beans start bulging, I'm not a fan of eating them at that size. I'd prefer them smaller like this. And so that's what I'll focus on when it comes to harvesting them. And again, the plants look terrible, but the beans themselves have survived. Good morning. Some pretty chilly temps. One of the things that we'll do, as we've been doing throughout, is we'll harvest some of these herbs, let them dry at this point. I don't know, we'll see these smaller leaves if I have enough for another round of pesto. We'll also see if we can get some of the seeds from some of these plants. It took quite a bit to get in there. So I'm actually gonna let that hopefully volunteer. But we do have some chocolate mint and some other herbs that are still just fine to enjoy, whether it's dried or fresh. Most of my herbs like that I normally let dry. My peppers, and this is pretty normal up until the first frost. I'll leave my peppers in place and do one last harvest beforehand. In this case, again, that's been delayed. When we were together last, I had some flowers that had set, and I wasn't even really optimistic about them producing, but since we had a warmer October, we have found that the serranos here, this plant has produced. This is more of the size that we want, but we're going to take everything off of the plant as we approach the frost, which again, it's not in the 10-day forecast even anymore. So we'll see. My real goal for these spaces would be in November to have it full of cool weather crops and to be really past the point of having summer crops that I have to do the dance with. But this year I didn't quite make that, and still very pleased that, I have eggplant, which I didn't get much of off of this plant this season. So to have this last big dance, good morning, it's pretty cool. This bed seems to have finally settled. This is that VEGO Garden bed that we put together last year, August. And I had some struggles with it as the soil line continued to drop. And I think it's finally settled. So I'm looking forward to adding more soil to it next year and then planting out in it. So this space, 2 feet by 4 feet, I've planted so many different things over the years. Right now we have arugula that we direct seeded. And because the cabbage butterfly is still in my space, I wanted to make sure to cover it. I have one more row of tulle fabric that I decided to use, and in this case I also added this black netting I like to use, only because the tulle fabric already had a couple of holes in it, and not so much squirrels, but some of the stray cats will make a home near this kind of fabric. I have some actual small kittens that have been hanging out. So that's what happened in that. It's hard to see, but there's an empty space there where I sowed seeds. And I could see where one of the kittens or the cats have been basically camping out. And the seeds either never germinated, or when they germinated, they were smushed. So my GreenStalk planters, it's a mixture of things. This planter here, this is a leaf that 7 tiers. We direct sowed in. This one, 5 tier, and we did a mixture of leaving some things that were already growing and we refreshed the soil for the top tiers, and then just direct sowed the mesclun mix, which is just a variety of different leafy greens. I was hoping for more lettuce. Yeah, so I think this is more like arugula. I have some kale in here that was mixed in, and you can see, I hope this focuses, there is a worm there, and that's what's been gnawing away at the leaves. Because I initially sowed these in August, later in the month I had a bunch of worm damage, so I finally covered it with insect netting, and then for the next week or two I came in day after day, opened the netting, and picked off worms. And so it's been stable for the last month and a half or so. And what I'll do, I took the cover off because we were getting some nice rain, and I wanted to give these leaves directly a shower. Even with insect netting, it still lets rain in, but I said let me give this the best soaking I can from the rain. And so what I'll do is come back in and, using cut and come again, harvest these larger leaves because the cover sits on top of the planter and I don't want them to get too smushed. So for this one, it was actually transplants that we added. So I had actually a bunch of different lettuce starts, and I transplanted those in, some celery starts, some chard that we put in. So the chard and the celery is just fine. All of the lettuce is bolted, but the red lettuce is not bitter yet. The green definitely is. And so I am keeping that in mind when I pick lettuce for a salad. We have the spinach planter, which only a couple of spots didn't germinate. And I may come back in and direct sow those again. And this is the only one that I've kind of left as is. At some point when I had some open pockets, I did direct sow some bush beans. And you can see again, there's still a few that will be harvested and eaten. We have some thyme, and then some basil that's seen better days. I'm at the point where I'll be able to save some of my snapdragon seeds. So we have our last round of peppers that I thought I'd have to move this when I came back in to replant that space, the bed behind it, but I never replanted the bed, so here we are. For the peppers, we'll come in and harvest whatever is viable as we get closer to the frost. We did one harvest in October, kind of clean sweep of the plants. The only exception was I did leave a couple of these bell peppers to try to get a little bit more of size. And so we'll have some fresh bell peppers to eat over the next several days. I also like to roast them, and even if you roast them and you can't eat all of them after you've roasted them, they freeze and then thaw pretty well. And I'll add that to pastas and salads and such, sandwiches. So I left a couple of potatoes, and unfortunately I won't get a harvest off of these. The frost and then the freeze is going to kill the plants back, which is okay. My last two areas, well, maybe three. So we'll share the sweet potato harvest because we dug up all of those potatoes, and really pleased with this year's harvest. The cage baby did a great job. I just let them stay in the ground a bit too long, which is something that I'll continue to work on, as I garden, kind of trying to harvest when things are prime versus when things are the most convenient to harvest. The black strawberries, tomatoes are still putting on just a couple. The Mad Hatter pepper, a mixture of green and red peppers. And then a space you all haven't seen much of, I did uncover it to share. I use the cut and come again method, and that's why these plants continue to grow tall, because I'm harvesting from the bottom up and then allowing them to continue to grow from the center. These haven't been kissed by frost yet, of course. This time of year, I normally have plants that have outgrown whatever fabric or netting or whatever I'm using. And in this case, I still have a little bit of room, but I'm tempted to leave the cover off. So because normally the greens have outgrown the netting, I kind of just chance it, recognizing that I have to keep my eye out for the cabbage worm and potential damage. So for the front yard, I basically have a couple of honey nut squash to harvest, and then just 1 or 2 cucumbers that are left. Unbelievable in November. Then I have the sweet potatoes that I wanted to share with y'all. So I am super pleased with the sweet potatoes, and now my brain is buzzing about where to plant them next year. They did so well in the cage, baby. That soil just continually produces those raised beds year over year. And so I don't know if I'll plant them in the beds on the far end. They were planted in the middle this year, or do something different. But we'll see. We had time to plan. So that's it. We'll do a quick one today. Less is growing, but there's still things that are growing, things that are maintaining. I appreciate y'all spending some time with me. As always, if you have any questions or comments, feel free to drop them below. See y'all on the next one.